There you go.
Good to be early, right?
Yep, heck yeah.
Except you left your desk full of stuff. Right?
Yes, I did.
Now, you need to.
let us know if anybody's in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask them now.
It's 2:30. I note the presence of the quorum. Call this meeting to order. Item 2, consideration and action on the minutes of the January 12th meeting.
I'll move approval as written.
Second. Okay, motion made and second to approve the minutes. Further discussion of the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Now, let me do my sacred duty here. I want Donna tackling me on the way out. Bad back. Yeah, wait a minute. I gave you my agenda.
Oh, okay, here.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
You have to share it.
We're even. Okay, moving on to item 3, citizens to be heard. I see none present in the room or any of them present virtually.
Eamon, are there any present virtually?
Nobody. No citizens to be heard. Moving on to item 4. Consideration and possible action regarding the audit. Let's table that. Mr. Straley is caught on the Harbor Bridge.
He will attend this meeting. He's just gonna be a little late.
Or next year's one or the other.
Mr. President,
Anyhow,
small point of order.
we'll come back to that one.
D, small point of order.
Yeah.
You don't table it unless you're going to consider it in a future meeting. We'll just
Okay.
postpone it to later.
We'll just postpone it to later then. Thank you. Good point. Okay, item 5, consideration and possible action on the contract for consulting services for the calculation of agricultural land values for 2021-22 by Pritchard and Abbott.
Just a little background on this. We talked about this last year about the same time, and they put together a contract for us to sign, but it's only for this year. So it was this year, 21 and 22. But just to let you know, they helped us out in 20. They've already provided some work for us. We're in the process of changing some of our soil schedules, and the expert, which is somebody from Pritchard and Abbott, actually puts that stuff together. So he's helping us right now. But we did talk about this last year. The good news about all of this is we've already budgeted for that in the budget for 21. So there's no additional, no hidden, there's nothing outside of the normal purview of the budget.
Now, are these the same, is this the same company, probably not the same folks that do the minerals valuation?
That is correct. Yeah,
Have done for some time.
that's correct.
And the $6,500 compensation is just for the agricultural portion?
That
or
is-
it both.
Just for the agriculture. Mhm.
Yeah, okay, got it.
6,500 for 21, 6,500 for 22.
Right,
Okay.
So you need a motion?
I do.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve the agricultural valuation contract. Further discussion?
just that it requires both D and Michael. And who's the secretary of the board? You.
All in favor? Aye.
I will say aye.
And I need to sign this. All righty. I did it. Oh, here it is. I'll do it again. Item 7. Item 6, consideration and possible action on replacing appraisal board review members to fill vacancies. We have had 2 vacancies, not the end of terms, but Ramona LeBlanc moved out of the county, so she is no longer eligible. And then Cindy Duck has encountered a lot of medical issues, and she respectfully requested that she resign. And we have letters of resignation from both of them. Do we need a motion to accept those?
Yeah, we need a motion to accept the resignations and to replace the 2. So you might want to go ahead and talk about the replacements here.
Okay. 2 replacements. Scott Waggart Some of you will probably know Cam. He is Cam's husband, been around for a long time. He and Charlie Powers worked together at one point. So Charlie came up with him. I talked to Scott, and he's understands the game and is comfortable with doing it. And then Cindy talked with her husband, Bill Duck, and he is interested in doing it. So they'll keep it under the same roof. I know Bill not closely. I think that he would be plenty well up to the job. So can we just wrap this in one motion? Approve these two folks?
So move.
So moved. And accept the resignations of Ramona and Cindy. All right?
So we're accepting the resignations of Ramona and Cindy, and we are also appointing Bill and Scott
Scott,
to
yes.
replace them on the current term.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've done that.
One more point of note in regard to that. The judge, Judge Watley, has to approve, since one of those positions was the secretary position, it's required that she's the one that actually appoints that position. So we did have a conversation with Charlie in regard to Robert Dayton, who's currently on the ARB, and he put in the documentation. So subsequent to this meeting, we're going to send that over to Watley to promote him to that secretary position for the ARB. Just to let you know, just inform.
Thank you.
Yeah, good, thank you. Let's get our heads together, Mike. I'd like to send a nice letter thanking Ramona and Cindy for their service.
Sure.
One question, they are leaving, in the middle of the term, not at the end of the term. What are the training requirements?
The training requirements are an online class that most of the other board has already just undertaken because it's taken up until last month, up until these last 3 or 4 weeks for the comptroller to get that out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to immediately get them on board with taking that course prior to this coming season, prior to the protest season that's coming here in a month and a half.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's straightforward online, and I think both candidates are familiar with the requirement for that.
Both candidates will be made familiar with they'll take the class for the first time and they'll be made familiar with the procedures of the ARB, the rules, and everything.
Okay. Nothing further on item 6 then. Item 7, consideration and possible action regarding appointment of agricultural advisory board members.
I went from 5 and I only have 3 now. So I have Jim Schuman, Jerry Longino, and David Nesloni Jr. They were at my most recent meeting. They gave good information as it related to ag type properties. This advisory board serves at my pleasure. It's really kind of like, hey, they're here as an informational source. I had my Pritchard and Abbott representative that we just talked about present at that meeting so that he could ask questions that were tangible to, like, what type of soils. Does it have to do with tree coverage, or does it have to do with type of soils? So he got some good information there. This is my recommendation for my board. So that's what I have.
All right, so moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Are you telling me you'd rather have 5?
Yeah, if I could have 5, I'd like to have 5, but 3 suffice. I mean, three. If I can get 3 people to show up. And
It looked like it was a productive meeting. I mean, I read the minutes, I guess, or
Yeah.
whatever, and it looked like it was.
Yeah, we talk about fencing, we talk about water costs, we talk about, animal 100 count weight. We talk about all those things that are relative to building up a productivity value associated for agriculture type land. That's our focus.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, that's good that you've got 3 that seem pretty solid, because there's not a heck of a lot of agriculture in this county.
No.
As opposed to some other places.
Relative to the overall value of things, it's pretty small.
Okay, item 8, consideration and possible action to amend the 2021 budget to address allocation of unassigned funds.
Now, this kind of relates to Mr. Streely's audit report. And so he's going to go into the unassigned funds, and we have in that audit report, you have unassigned funds and you have a committed fund balance. And it would be useful for him to give his report prior to us having this motion. But it relates to us having an amount. And specifically, if you'll look at that first document, which is titled 21-21-318. No, that's not right. Sorry. It is 12/31/20 is the actual PDF name. And if you look at that one, it actually gives you the audit report. And in that audit report on page 11, I believe, it talks about unassigned funds. Let me see if I'm looking at the right number here. Yes. On page 11 of that document, you look at the fund balance and it says unassigned funds, 135,350. So that number is relevant to the number that we're going to, that my suggestion in this resolution that will be presented.
Where were you, Mike? Sorry, it took me,
I'm sorry.
I had to figure out how to use the Kindle.
Yeah, it's page 11.
And it's page 11 on the document, not on the.
Page
Thank you.
13 on the actual thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth kind of area says fund balance, and underneath fund balance, the one that's relevant is unassigned. So there's 135,350 there. The majority of that fund balance comes from the sale of 601 South Church Street that we sold last year. That's approximately $96,000. I think is what we sold that for. I think somewhere in that range. That's the majority of that $135,000 contribution. Now, we have 135. I think the remaining balance of that would have been an influx of FEMA money. Again, FEMA has indicated, and you know, the wheels of FEMA run very slow. And I've just said, you know, if you want your money back, you have to ask for your money back in written format. And they've done a portion of that, but we suspect that they're going to want the remaining balance. So what we calculated that balance is $49,558 and change. So I rounded it to the nearest $1,000 increment. And my the resolution that you're going to vote on is going to say it's $50,000 for the anticipated cost for the FEMA reimbursement. The remaining of this 135, we're going to put into the fund, which we've called Hurricane Harvey. Well, Hurricane Harvey is a Hurricane Harvey rebuild for this building. And subsequent to all of our rebuilding events here, it's my intention, once we're done, to give all those monies back to the entities, whatever remaining balance that we have. But that won't be done for another year and a half for that time. So this is going to be relevant to the report that Streely's going to give. And if you want to wait until he gives that report, you can do that before you do this resolution. I think that's prudent. And I can move on to, we can move on to the next item, which I can start to do my chief appraiser's report until Streely gets here. If you'd like to proceed.
There's no objection to that. I have no problem with it.
I just, and he can answer this when he gets here. I would have thought that the FEMA money, once we knew that they were going to ask for part or all of it back, might have been put in committed as opposed to unassigned. That's just
Well, that's the idea. So we have unassigned 135, and we want to break that up into two different line items on the committed fund balance. That's what we're trying to do. And so part of that committed fund balance will be the anticipated line item that says anticipated FEMA reimbursement, and the remaining 85,000 and change will go into the line item that we already have, which is Hurricane Harvey. And we already have 290 in that one. That page number, just if you want to look at that page number on that audit report, is page number 20 on the thing, on the report. And it actually has the committed fund balance there. The total committed fund balance is $643,975. What we would be saying, or the board would decide, is you would want to add $135,350 to that. 50,000 being the anticipated FEMA refund. And then the other $85,000 or so to Hurricane Harvey, which is the Hurricane Harvey rebuild.
If I could ask you just to consider the addition of one word, word to, pay to FEMA, as opposed to where it looks like it's money that in its verbiage could be like it's coming to us.
If we want to change the resolution in any format, we can handwrite that in and we can do it on the record.
If it doesn't matter to anybody else in the room, there's no big
No,
deal.
I'm totally good with it. I mean, whatever you want to do. As far as, marking it up, we actually mark it during this meeting.
I
We
think,
verbalize it.
Well, FEMA reimbursement sounds like, to me, we might be expecting some money to pay us back.
Okay, reimbursement
To FEMA.
Yeah. That works. Yeah, that works.
I think we all probably pretty well understand this and have for some time. Other people looking at it, it could be pretty darn confusing. And I suggested some changes to the verbiage in the letter, which has to go out to the heads of entities, explaining why we have the resolution and clearly stating how we got 135 in unassigned funds sitting there. One, FEMA overpaid us and we can't get them to get their act together and ask for it back. It's our judgment that they will do that to the tune of approximately 50,000. The other 90 some odd thousand came from the sale of the South Church Street property, which we'd always intended to finish out, to use rather, to finish out the office. I put some language down here. I'm not married to it, but I think a little elaboration, because that sentence could easily be misread in the letter. The resolution proposes to amend the district's 2021 budget by transferring unassigned funds to reimburse FEMA and to provide for post-Harvey renovation. It begs the question of where did those funds come from? And there are some people that sometimes are sensitive to that.
Yeah, and Streely will give kind of well, there we go, speak of the devil.
Hey,
All right, hey, how are you doing, Tommy?
Welcome.
Welcome.
good to be here.
Come
Good to
on
be
in.
not on the Harbor Bridge.
Jeez, took me here an hour to get out of Corpus.
We were about to order you the t-shirt that said, "I survived the Harbor Bridge."
And then I was afraid to take some alternate stuff because there's so much construction and closed streets.
Well, Tommy, we postponed your presentation, but we took care of the others. So you came in at a really good time
Oh, good.
to talk about unassigned funds and where that unassigned fund really generated from, and maybe you can answer some of those
Sure.
questions for us. So it'll be good.
Okay, just to make sure we're on the record procedurally, we're coming back to item 4, consideration and possible action regarding the Aransas County Appraisal District 2020 audit, Mr. Straley. And then we'll come on back again to the unassigned funds resolution.
Okay.
Okay, here's my floor.
Holy moly.
Just set what you want down.
Okay, each thing get one of these.
Okay.
Colin,
Bless you.
thank you.
Just in rain. Probably.
My truck is yellow. I know it's Colin.
What do you say, do this?
Just pass one down. Keep one and pass it down.
Yeah, get them down. That's it. And keep them free, so. That's okay.
You already have one. I think there was an extra.
Yeah, there's. Hey, you need a bound. Everybody can get a bound one?
Yes, sir.
The stapled one, that's just something we're required to do, saying we didn't have any problems. Mike and Josie were real nice to me and they got everything. And it's just a required report, communication through the board. And so it's all boilerplate language and it's the same as last year. Hopefully I got the dates changed. So that's what that is. On the audit report, I'll go over that and hit the highlights. We are engaged to issue an opinion on the financial statements. And that opinion comes right after the table of contents. And you'll see there's several bolded statements there. And the second one says management responsibility. And management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of these financial statements. And Mike and Josie do an excellent job of that. They give me all the information, and we're able to go from there. And when we request information, Josie just gets it real quick. And we did it all, basically, nearly all online, like we did last year. But when it comes to the testing the payroll, I do come in and look at the payroll files, personnel. So, and then the second bold paragraph there is it's auditor's responsibility. And it's our responsibility to express an opinion on these financial statements in accordance with government auditing standards. And there's a lot more there, but basically that's it. And then the opinion paragraph is on the next page. And the opinion paragraph states that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And that's an unqualified opinion, and that's the best you could have. And as I've stated in the past, you could have a qualified opinion, which states they're presented fairly except for some item, or a worst case scenario, an adverse opinion, which would state that they're not presented fairly. There's also some required supplementary information, which goes on in the next paragraph, which is the management discussion and analysis. There's some budget presentation, and there's some pension contribution information. And if anybody has any questions, just interrupt me, and we'll stop and discuss it. Starting on page 3 is the management discussion and analysis. And basically, Mike and Josie put this together. I give them the basic format, and I put some of the numbers in there, and then they do a lot of the explanations of why items went down. You sold your lot over Church Street.
On Church
Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that made for a little more income than was budgeted, and so that's explained in there. I'll go over, show you that in a minute. That goes on for several pages. The financial statements that I'm going to go over start on page 11. And just to refresh your memory, there's 3 columns here. You have your general fund, and the general fund is how you budget. For instance, if you budget for the purchase of the building or something, that's in here on the general fund. You also, on the right-hand side, have the statement of net assets. We're required to present the financial statements in two methods. One, the modified accrual, which is on the left-hand side, which is the way you budget, and you budget your statements that way. And then the full accrual is on the right-hand side. And the full accrual includes this building and is depreciated. It includes your net pension liability. Well, none of that, you don't budget for that. You don't budget for depreciation. You budget for any capital assets you might be purchasing. So we really look at the general fund. It's just required by Governmental Accounting Standards Board to put that right-hand column in there. And it's full accrual, but the left-hand column, the general fund, is really where you budget. It's your money. And looking at that, on the general fund, your cash and cash investments are $985,000, and that's up about $219,000 from last year. That comes about, you had on your deferred unavailable revenue for assessments, about in the middle of the page, $170,000. Well, that's up. So that brought you, and what that is your taxing entities were required to pay the first quarter prior to December 31st. So the first quarter of 2021, the taxing entities are required to pay by January 1st. So they pay it and they're paying it in advance. And that's the unavailable revenue deferred assessments. And that's 170,006. Accounts payable, jump back up a little bit, are up a little higher than normal. You had your aerial photography, 31,000, which was in accounts payable this year. And normally that's not in accounts payable. So if you take that out, the accounts payable are just about where they have been in the past. Your fund balances, the non-spendable fund balance equals the prepaid insurance. Yeah, that's not something you can spend, is prepaid insurance. You have the unassigned, 135,350, and you have the committed. The committed, if you look over on page 20, the committed, there's in the notes of financials, the total is $644,000. But that is made up, committed fund balances are committed by the board and the board uncommits. Mike can't decide, oh, well, I want this to be so much committed. He can present it to the board and the board can make the decision. The board commits and the board uncommits. Just because you spend it doesn't uncommit it. All right, so you have future legal fees of 30,000, computer replacement of 30,000, building maintenance of 31,870, Hurricane Harvey of 290,774, and then we take 3 months of operating budget. We take the 2021 budget, divide it by 12, multiply it times 3. That's kind of operating budget. If you decided to refund everything, you'd always have 3 months of operating. Okay, so the unassigned, to explain that, the unassigned, well, let's go to the next page and we can see how we get to that unassigned. Last year, well, let me just start on the general fund. You'll see the taxing entities, 997,949. That's up. You received what you budgeted from your taxing entities. That's up about $92,000. But that's what you budgeted. I'm on page 12, and that's what you budgeted. The sale of 601 South Church Street, 96,000. Of course, that's was zero last year, so that's an increase of 96,000.
What's the adjustment?
Okay, the adjustment is to get it to accrual basis. And what you have to do, y'all received $96,000 for the land, but the cost was there was $26,000 in cost. So your net, the land cost you $26,000. Long time.
Going back
many years ago. Okay. So you netted $69,275, but on modified accrual, you show the total cash received because you don't have fixed assets in modified accrual.
Okay.
They're expense. And you'll see that throughout here. Personnel services, the adjustment column has to do with the pension liability. Depreciation is depreciation on the fixed assets, which modified accrual doesn't have. Capital outlay, when you buy computers and stuff and modified accrual, the whole fixed assets expensed, but in full accrual, you capitalize it and depreciate it. So that's what the adjustment column is. It's to get it to full accrual. Miscellaneous income is down because in 2019, you had some grant revenue in there. So 1,133,000 in total revenue. Your personnel, which is the salaries and benefits, that's up about $63,000. Had one new employee and the benefits went up. That was the increase there. Still below budget, but up $63,000 from last year. Professional services are $99,000. That's up $24,000. You had COVID-related issues that you discussed with the attorneys, and there were just more lawsuits, lawsuits on the appraisal values.
Can you go back and let me ask a question?
Yeah.
For my clarification,
Mhm.
on the sale of Church Street.
Yeah.
I understand the cost at 26.8,
Mhm.
but somewhere the cash for that still resides in the statements, do they not? Does it not?
Well, you got 96,075, so it's part of your fund balance.
Yeah, okay, you said the same thing.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
part of your fund balance. That's why your fund balance, if you look, your net revenues, 146,000, excess of revenues over expenditures,
Mhm.
146,000. Well, y'all had not budgeted for that sale of Church Street. So that's 96,000 of that 146,000. You had beginning fund balance of 641,717. So you have an ending fund balance of 788,251. Now let's talk about your different fund balances. You actually had a deficit, a little bit of a $6,000 or so deficit last year in your unassigned. So if you take that deficit and add to it the 146 for the current year, you get unassigned of 135,350. Now, you have decisions that the board will need to make. With that, like for that unassigned, you basically have three decisions you can make. You can say, oh, we're just going to return it to all your taxing entities. You can just leave it as unassigned and let it go. Or you can take it and add to your committed fund balances, to one of them. I went over what your committed fund balances are. You can change your committed fund balances. Let's say you don't want to have any committed fund balances. Then you could return, close to $400,000 to your taxing entities. But, you still have a lot of work to do to finish this building. So you don't return all your money when you've got more build out to do. But that is y'all's decision. You can keep everything in committed just like it is, because you're going to have more legal issues. There's computer replacements coming up. It doesn't mean it has to be done in the next year. It's just something that you're keeping it there for future commitments. So, like I said, you've got future legal fees of 30, computer replacement of 30, building maintenance 31,870, Hurricane Harvey 290,774, which is basically the build out of this building, and then the 3 months operating for 643,977. And the unassigned, which is available to do something with, is 135,350.
All right.
Any questions on that?
Just one, this is what I thought I heard. You said we ended up last year with a deficit of 6,000, 6,500, something like that,
Mhm.
in excess. And then we end up with 135. In my mind, I can't make those two numbers balance.
Oh, well, I'm using estimates.
Okay.
I'd have to look to get you the exact numbers.
Okay.
The exact numbers. I can give it to you
You're talking
exactly.
about the difference of the 146 as
And,
opposed to
well,
135.
140 versus 135 when you back out sales.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I can give you
Okay.
the exact
I heard that
numbers.
too, and I was like, that's 11, not 6, but I mean, right? Is that where you were
Yeah.
going? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was, you had a deficit, actually several things, not one, a few things. You had a deficit of 7,180.06. You added to it 146,533. The 3 months operating went up $4,000. So you take that
That's 7.
out of your unassigned.
Yep.
So you had 7,180 deficit. You added 146 current year, and 4,003 came out of it to go up to the 3 months reserve. I forgot about that.
Thank you.
The budget is on page 32. And there's really only two areas that, of course, the Church Street was 96,000 unbudgeted. The total favorable revenue was 103,000, of which 96,000 was the sale of Church Street. Your expenditures was favorable 42,673, and your professional services was the only one that was really a major deficit. When I say deficit, expenditures over budget of 25,000.
Legal fees.
Legal fees, yes, sir, legal fees. And so that's you had a balanced budget, and so the budget is favorable 146,000, and that's what your net income is $146,000. So of course the budget is just an estimate, so you're never going to hit exactly right on the nose. You can hit the taxing entity revenue right on the nose, but everything else is just an estimate. So you came out pretty close on most of those. I won't go over it, but on the very last page is, if you want to see what's in the personnel services, supplies and operating, it's detailed on page, so you can see on the net asset, statement of net assets and the changes in fund balance on the expenditures, that is summarized. But the detail, if you want to see what the detail is, it's on that, the very last page. And everything except for professional services are real close to what they were last year. And you can see the personnel services, the salaries and benefits, and all the other detail on that. Of course, you didn't have building rent this year, 2020. When I say this year, I'm talking about 2020.
Insurance is physical damage from windstorm, correct?
Yes, You see, it's all real close to prior year in most instances. So it's a good year. Like I indicated earlier, Mike and Josie did a good job. Josie does a good job with the bookkeeping. She has a question. We have Betty Morales in our office knows QuickBooks, and she'll call Betty and get any help she needs, which is not often, but occasionally. Well, there are some schedules back there. I see you looking at the pension stuff. There are some pensions, and y'all have your pension with the TCDRS, and we get they have an appraisal value. They have a firm that does the assessments on how much is there, and they invest the money, and that's mostly, they have an audit. We take their information and drop it into the statements. One thing, in 2019 on your pension liability, there was a huge loss in investments, and it came back up this year. So the liability was in 2019 had gone up. This year, the investment income came back up and the liability went back down. So that's all. I feel like I'm rushed. I don't mean to be rushed.
No, take your time. This is important.
I'm through. I mean, I'll be glad to
Any
answer
idea
your
what would
questions.
have caused the loss in the pension in 2019?
Well, they're also a year behind. So when we say 2019, they're really talking about 2018.
Well, even good.
No, I don't. I don't.
Do you follow yours, Michael, see what it's doing?
I just look at the report when it comes out.
Yeah.
Do you? Okay.
I get a report once a year. I look and see what, it tells me what I would do when I retire at this age. And
Why do you do
Yeah,
that?
Imagine
technically,
that. Donna's
on
really
paper.
interested.
and technically on paper, I can
Can you,
retire in 4
can you see
years.
retirement from here? Is that what you want?
Donna is getting her ducks in a row.
Legally, if on paper, I can retire in 4 years because I got the service and the age. But
Yeah, they do all of that. I certainly don't. That's another pay grade above me.
It's nice to have a clean line.
Thank you. Yeah, they do a good job. And, you know, if you're looking at it later, you know, I doubt if you would, but if you happen to be looking at it later and have a question, feel free to call me. I'm officially retired, but I can't seem to get away, and I enjoy.
Can't quit, huh?
Well, I enjoy. I kind of get to do the ones I want. I enjoy this audit because it's fairly simple, and they pay me extra to work, and we're shorthanded right now. So.
Well, I was about to ask if you were a slow learner, but it sounds like you got it figured out.
Yes, sir.
You did it well.
Yeah, I'm making more now than I did when I was working, or a partner. You know, I sold my practice, so I'm getting money from my
Heck of a
practice.
deal.
And Social Security and then an hourly rate. So I'm not complaining at all.
Good for you.
I still can go fishing when I need to go fishing. So.
It doesn't get much better than that, I don't think.
No, sir, it doesn't. It doesn't. Every once in a while, there's a deadline I gotta get to, but, you know, when I get through here, I'm going home. I'm not going to the office.
Mike,
Very nice.
do we need to discuss any more while you hear the reassignment of funds?
Sure. One
I'd be
of the,
glad to.
What-
Mike and I talked about it, when we had our exit conference.
yeah, one of the
I
questions.
think
that-
he had a good
yeah,
grasp of it.
Yeah, one of the questions that the board had, so one of the following things on the agenda is a resolution to propose the budget amendment to transfer the unassigned funds, and we're taking that 135 and we're splitting it two ways, or that's my suggestion to the board. And they get to make action on that. The 135 is going to be Hurricane Harvey rebuild, that's 85,350, and then 50,000 for the anticipated FEMA reimbursement
That's good.
to FEMA.
Yeah, that's a
So
good idea.
50,000.
26,000.
Yeah, well, it's 50,000. It's 50,000.
Okay.
And one of the documents that Dee had was what's required along with this budget is a letter to all of the presiding officers, to the entities. And I don't know if you wanted to read that to Tommy, or because he wasn't in on that conversation. Or
No, this is not the resolution. This is the letter to the heads of the entities.
Yeah.
And in the first paragraph, this resolution proposes to amend the district's 2021 budget by transferring unassigned funds to reimburse FEMA and to provide for post-Harvey renovation and repair. That sentence to me could be misleading.
Well, you're not revising your budget,
And
for one thing. You're just, your budget's, you know, if you've done your budget is set, you're not changing your budget. You're just realigning your fund balance.
okay,
Which means by doing that, they won't be getting the money. The taxing entities won't be getting the money
Right.
because it's not available anymore.
And I think what my suggestion was to change that so that the entities, it would perhaps be clearer the source of those unassigned funds. Unassigned funds, you know, of that size tend to raise eyebrows. And so I would say that the resolution proposes to amend the district's budget by transferring unassigned funds, which were derived largely from the sale of 601 Church Street property and other post-Harvey settlements. That perhaps should be clear. And then the reverse FEMA for an overpayment, which is basically what it was. They paid us for something that they said they shouldn't have paid us for.
well, they paid us for something that they're going to want back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so they made, it's their, as far as I'm concerned, it's their mistake. They screwed up. You don't have to put that in a minute. No.
You already got it, don't worry about it.
They made a mistake, and they say we aren't entitled to it, we're gonna give it back to them.
Yeah.
We did not go out and spend it on brand new desk chairs or anything. And for interior renovation of the ACAD office, something like that.
I agree with Tom, though, it's not a budget amendment.
Yeah, the
It's an
very
asset
first,
allocation.
you know, it's a, you know,
It's
it's
a
right.
reallocation, yeah.
It's not a budget. Right in the very first there, you said, we're going to change our budget or amend our budget.
Yeah.
It's
Well, listen,
just-
okay, you
I
all
would-
picked up on something that I missed there.
Yeah.
It does say to amend the budget.
Yeah, you're not amending the budget.
Okay, well, that's,
And let me share something with you that can happen. And some of you have heard this story before, but we do the Oasis County Appraisal District. Many years ago, they felt like they needed a new building. There were many problems with where they are. And so they started putting money aside, and it's quite a bit of money. They put it aside. And I thought it was really good what they were doing. Well, times got hard, and all of a sudden, the taxing entities saw this big fund balance. And even though they had representatives sitting on the board voting for it, they all of a sudden said, we want it back.
I remember that.
You remember? Yeah. And so I felt like the board was doing due diligence. They were saving it over a period of time, putting money back. And because of the third floor, you could not get a gunny wheelchair stuff. You couldn't get it up to the third floor. Gurney. If you had, if there was someone that had to get EMR, they couldn't get up there in a regular method. So there were all kinds of problems with that building. But they got it back, and because they could. I mean, they
The way they set
raised,
aside.
they raised the fit, and they got it back. So that's just one thing. And the taxing entities felt like they didn't know about all of this. Well, they had board members, and I think they did. But all that to say, really communicate good with your taxing entities through a letter like this.
Okay, I've got a math question.
well, yeah, go ahead.
How much do you want to transfer from unassigned? Go back over that with me again.
There's 135,350. I would like to take that total amount and split it two ways. I would like to take 50,000 and put it to the anticipated FEMA reimbursement, which my calculations when I did it was 49,588. So it's rounding to the nearest $1,000 increment.
Okay, here's why I had you go through it. I want to be sure I understand. That leaves $85,000 then.
That's correct.
It appears from what you just told me that we did spend some of FEMA's money on something. If we're going to take 50, which would only be 40 in the map. If you're going to set aside $50,000 from 140, that takes you to 85. Follow me? You're not,
Well,
okay.
I think you're right, except the FEMA money goes into one big pot. And so maybe you don't know. I mean, the FEMA money came in to the bank as one big part.
Okay,
And
so
did you spend
the
it?
answer is we probably did spend
Yeah.
$8,000 to $10,000, and we're
Very,
still going to
very
ask for it back
likely,
one way or the
very,
other.
very likely.
Okay.
It'd be real hard to say, we bought this with FEMA money and we bought that with FEMA.
I didn't realize it had to go in one, or it did go in one pot.
Yeah, it went in one
Okay,
pot. It wasn't
understood.
kept separate and then spent out of a bank account.
Then I think at least our internal motion is to sit on that $50,000 until FEMA formally asks for it back. Because it is not, just as though they often come back and ask for monies, they often forget or don't get it done.
Right.
And then just sit there and commit it until they do.
Right. And I think it's prudent that this board
It would be
moves.
really imprudent to spend that.
Yeah, and by putting in committed, it covers. So what would happen on that footnote that we have, would have future legal fees of 30,000, computer replacement 30,000, building maintenance 31,870, Hurricane Harvey 297.74
Plus
plus,
the 85,
and then
350.
another line item FEMA reimbursement or
Anticipated.
whatever, and then 3 months operating budget.
Okay,
And that's the way that would go.
Right.
And that's, in next year's audit, I'll look at this motion, I'll get the numbers, and it'll go in here.
And I think the real key is transparency.
Yes,
Tell
sir.
them
Right.
That's kind of where I
why
was
we're
trying.
doing it, and, we don't know what FEMA's bill will be. It may not come.
Right.
At
The,
some point.
Well,
they
some
might
of it
say-
already has.
yes,
Yeah, some of it
26,000.
has.
the 26,000 has already come and that's already been dispensed.
Right.
At some point, we might have to wrestle with that. We know we're gonna have expenses to renovate the interior of this building. We don't know what they're gonna be yet. So everything that came out of the sale, South 01 Church Street, which is kind of the net, that other number minus 50. Throw it in there for renovation, and we get that done, we have 50 or 75,000 left over, it should go back to the entities. Because they paid for that building ultimately.
And that can be a decision you make next year after you get this done and after FEMA's out of the way and everything's kind of cleaned up.
Right, and that's something I talked to Tommy about, that once we're all done, then we'll know exactly how much we can give back and make a few, the next meeting we'll make a resolution and the board can act on that. The only reason, and I appreciate that you've said that we're really not amending the budget, that we're just allocating unassigned funds. This resolution was written by my attorney out of an abundance of caution to do exactly that, to actually disseminate that information to the entities. We can do so through a motion and just a letter that we're not amending the budget, we're just assigning unassigned funds to the committed fund balance.
That's
And
what you're doing.
we can do that today and not actually do a resolution. This was done out of an abundance of caution by my attorney to say, hey, listen, you want to tell everybody exactly what you're doing. And this was one way to ensure that it happens, because if you do a budget resolution, then you're required to give the notice 30 days and then you act on that resolution. But if you're telling us we don't need a resolution and we're actually doing just an assignment of funds from unassigned to committed, and we actually put a letter together, we can still send it out and tell them what we're doing. That's okay.
Yeah, well, Mike, it does take a resolution to commit the funds. You're saying you're going to allocate the funds,
Okay.
that takes a resolution.
But it's not a budget.
But it's not a budget resolution. It's a resolution to commit the excess
I think
funds.
where we may have erred in our semantics, in both the resolution and the letter, is talking about the budget amendment.
Right.
Just call it a reallocate. We're going to
Yes.
unassigned funds. Now we're going to assign them.
Okay, so-
FEMA.
So, yeah, you're just talking about assigning the funds in the resolution.
So-
There's nothing in a budget about the budget in the
So,
resolution.
okay, just for clarity, what we have is on the agenda is,
Well,
okay, so what do you want to do?
well, you can't do a budget amendment if you don't need to do a budget amendment. The question, I think, comes down to, can we do an allocation of funds within the asset portion of the balance sheet? And I think you
Yes.
can.
Let's say we think about a resolution. I mean,
I've got resolutions I could send you.
Well,
let me just
but
try this, that, the board resolves that the, whatever this 135, 350, and what is now unassigned funds should be allocated 50,000 to the potential request by FEMA for repayment. Or I can call it overpayment, call it a repayment of funds that were advanced. And the rest of it to the renovation of the interior of this building, not use the word budget amendment.
Yeah, that's it. I think you got it. That's it.
And just talk about a reallocation. And we use the same thing, the third technically paragraph in here, whereas section 601 may not be needed. And just say, well, this is not a budget amendment. Out of abundance of caution.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't do budget in there anyway. I'd do the first part, just like you said, resolution to
And
assign.
And then notify them with the
To
letter
allocate.
using,
okay, So-
and explaining where
Yeah.
that fund balance came from in the first place. It wasn't something you guys were skimming off the top here. It's
yeah, and
not ill-gotten gains.
No, it's all right there for them to see.
okay, so I'm going to ask a question. Item number 8 on our agenda says consideration of possible action to amend the 21 budget to address allocation of unassigned funds. So that's in error.
Yes, it is.
So do we need to do this at a later time to be correct? And what does it need to say? Just consideration of possible action to address allocation of unassigned funds,
That's it.
period?
Yeah.
Okay, do we need to do that at a later time?
No, because you're not amending a budget.
Okay, so So you're
Just
saying we could take this action today,
Yes.
or the board can take this
Yeah,
action today?
I don't see why we couldn't.
Okay, so then,
Just because it's been misnamed is not changing the function.
okay, so,
Get the term budget amendment out of it.
so the
We
resolution,
gotta allocate those unassigned funds in this manner, and, the board approves that.
so you don't need a resolution, you just need a board action.
Well,
We're
Supposedly you do need a
We're
resolution,
approving a resolution.
but it's not a
Two.
budget resolution, Mike. It's a resolution to assign that 135,000 to the committed fund
Amy?
balances.
Can you get, this resolution and print one out? Do you have a copy of the resolution?
Yep.
Maybe, make a copy of this one real quick and get it to Streely.
Just need a
Yeah, I
photocopy
think
of
you're
this
trying to
thing?
make it more complicated. than it
I
is.
just wanna, we need to mark it up today if we need to, in the way that it reads, so that the board can take an action today.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I think we ought to get this done,
good.
and, we've got that wonderful money sitting there unassigned, 135,000.
Yeah,
And, what I think our consensus intention is, we haven't voted on it, but it's my sense is, we want to do exactly what Mike is suggesting. Put 50,000 of it as a contingency, to pay back FEMA, if and when they make that request, and the rest of it to renovate the interior of this building. Or to be spent on the renovation of the interior. There's
Right.
more money assigned to that.
right.
And I think you can use sort of the same cover letter. I do think it needs to clarify in the cover letter.
Yeah.
Where those unassigned funds came from.
Yeah, let's go ahead. and-
Overpayment by FEMA and level 601 church.
And we can mark this up and we can read it into the record so that it's clear for everybody that's listening and looks at this meeting at a later time to make sure that we're doing the things we need to do. But we are disseminating information that we have 135 and this board wants to take action on that 135 from unassigned to a committed fund. And they're going to line item an apportionment of those committed funds, 50 and 85,000, and 85,350.
Well, the first paragraph on the resolution looks all right. Let me just go through this.
No, I think it should be, whereas the 2021 Aransas County Appraisal District fund balance contains unassigned funds in the amount of 135,
Is there a
350
budget
fund
for
balance.
fund balance?
And I think now, and then the next paragraph is fine, whereas the board of directors has determined that the 135, 350 should go, 50,000 in the 85,000. And then the only one I'm not sure about is the next one. It says whereas section 606C of the Texas Tax Code requires the secretary of the board to deliver a written copy of any proposed amendments to the presiding officer of the governing body of each tax
Since
year.
this is not a budget amendment, it doesn't
Take
require.
that out.
the approval
Take that
of
out.
the entities. So scratch that one.
Can you address the heading, please?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
I didn't read that.
Does that mean that this letter,
There's the proposed-
That letter's going to be modified.
To match the
so
To match.
leave that alone?
Yes, that, we had letters already
What
ready
do you
to
think,
go out.
Tommy? Proposing reallocation of unassigned funds,
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
proposing,
Yeah. Third paragraph, just take out, rest of it. Oh, the very last one, to amend the 2000, very last paragraph, proposing to amend to,
take this whole paragraph out.
yeah.
Try again, Donna.
Good. What about right here? And let's talk about
Now,
amend the 21 budget. So you gotta change that.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
reallocate
Reallocate
The fund balance.
fund balance, reallocate the 2021 fund, rather than budget, fund balance.
And it's not the 2020, it's the 2020
Yes,
fund balance.
yes, you're right, you're right.
Whereas the 2020, in the first paragraph, whereas the 2020 appraisal district fund balance, not 2021.
That's right. Okay, that should be 2020. Well, there's a few more
Read what
changes that
I've
I
written
thought
here.
about, but you gotta read it carefully.
You mean to read that into the
Want
record?
me to read this?
Somebody needs to read it into the record.
I'll read it because I can probably read my writing. Hold on, it's not certain. Resolution proposing reallocation of unassigned fund
Balance.
balances.
Good morning.
We don't need that to transfer. First paragraph, whereas the 2020 Orange County Appraisal District fund balance contains unassigned funds, the amount of $135,350. Whereas the board of directors, board of the district has determined that such unassigned funds, the amount of $135,350, should be allocated, one, reimbursement of funds in the amount of $50,000 previously paid to the district by FEMA, and two, a line item for post-Harvey renovation and remodeling in the amount of $85,350. Strike the whole next paragraph. Now therefore be it resolved that the board proposes to reallocate the 2020 fund balance, should we say unassigned?
Unassigned funds.
Unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance by allocating $135,350 in unassigned funds to, one, reimbursement of funds in the amount of $50,000 previously paid to the district by FEMA, and two, a line item for post-Harvey renovation and remodeling of $85,350. Full stop.
In their respective committed fund balance line items or something.
Yeah, you already have a line, Harvey.
Yeah.
Line item, you're just gonna add to it.
Right. You just need to say something about committed fund balance. You actually have to say, thank you.
Help me here. I'm not following exactly.
Now therefore be it resolved that the board proposes to, I think you said allocate.
Reallocate
Reallocate
unassigned fund
Funds.
balance.
unassigned funds
Unassigned funds.
to the committed fund balance. And then it does number one and number two, just like it says.
Is it appropriate to say reimbursement of funds, or do you need to say potential reimbursement?
Yeah, go ahead and say potential because we don't know.
That's
I like
good, yeah.
Good. Let's see. Yeah, reimbursement funds.
FYI, in the future, keep from it, don't deal with FEMA. Y'all aren't the only ones.
Going back to the second
We've already
paragraph,
made
whereas
that
the board of
very
directors
clear. Don't call
determined
us.
that such unassigned
FEMA.
funds, about $35,350 should be allocated one potential reimbursement.
School district. When we did. And we played the game of sitting down at the table as soon as I
Funds, yeah, $50,000 previously paid.
That
to
was
FEMA.
smart.
We were taken good care of.
That was smart.
The line item, we have a line item for post-Harvey renovation, right?
Yeah, you already have.
Say the line item. Golly, we're working on this. For post-Harvey renovation, remodeling in the amount of $80,000. Scratch the third paragraph. Now therefore be it resolved that the board proposes to reallocate the 2020 unassigned fund balance to the committed fund balance
And inform the presiding officer of the governing body that
by allocating $135,350 in unassigned funds to one, reimbursement of funds, in the amount of
Potential.
$50,000
Potential reimbursement.
previous potential reimbursement.
There's still school districts. Galveston.
Previously paid to the district by FEMA. Two, the line item.
Audit and take money.
Fort Aransas.
Okay. Let me read that last paragraph again. Now therefore be it resolved that the board proposes to reallocate the 2020 unassigned fund balance by allocating $135,350 unassigned funds to one, potential reimbursement of funds in the amount of $50,000 previously paid to the district by FEMA, and two, the line item for post-Harvey renovation and remodeling in the amount of $85,350.
I think that disseminates what we're trying, or what the board is trying to
Just
say.
saved $1,000 not having the attorney draw it.
Yeah, right.
At least.
Sounds legal enough to me.
Who is going to be the lucky person that gets to interpret my handwriting?
Donna said she would.
Donna, we have to retype this up. I have the Word document on my bill. But we read this into the record. Does anybody want to make a motion on this?
So moved.
Or you should have said that, but
That's okay, you did well. Mike is speaking for
Second.
me. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Okay. Motion made and seconded to approve the resolution. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
son, you want to sign that one because you read it in the record, and then we'll get you a printed copy.
All right.
So we just
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very
See you
much.
next year.
Good luck on the bridge.
Good luck on the bridge,
Well,
man.
it's all right going back. They just
No.
said they're doing
You
something.
need to get over there before
Don't bet on it.
Really?
Yeah.
When the refinery slash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
fine.
So
They had
come-
I
one
think we
lady,
need to still
Really?
send that.
and
at the end
they
of
were
this.
doing, look like, when they've done painting. or
Yep.
something. I just can't imagine.
You think so? I-
They're gonna be tearing
Middle of
it
the
down.
day.
I think
to
the transparency-
do that.
I don't know what they are doing.
It's not required.
There are people
We took
all in
that out
the
of
gear
resolution.
going over the side
Interesting.
and crane. I don't know. Maybe it's about to fall. I
I
don't know.
was fixing to say.
We'll see.
All right.
It always makes me a little nervous doing
Um,
that thing.
You need to make a motion on Mr. Streely's audit
That's what I
report.
was gonna
Yes.
ask. Let's skip over that.
I move that we approve the audit report as written and presented.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve the audit report. And further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And y'all made a motion on this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want me to read, the letter that's associated with this?
What letter?
There's a letter that accompanies this
It's gonna be-
resolution.
It's gonna have to
Is
be
it talking about this
It's
one?
gonna have to be
based
changed.
off, so, yeah.
All it does is mirror what's in the motion.
Make sure it conforms by getting any reference to budget amendment out.
To
Just
funds balance
reallocation.
and allocated
This
funds.
is to inform you.
Okay,
We're
so,
not playing hanky
You're gonna
panky
edit
here.
it the same way that
There's a lot of money.
so the board has directed me to present a letter on the surface of this resolution to mirror the wording to reflect the fund balance rather than budget amendment. Okay? All right,
Yes, sir.
good. All right, we
Okay.
can move on.
Before you get into, what I'm sure it's gonna be really exciting, appraisers report, I'm gonna go to the restroom break.
Okay, does anybody else want a break?
Donna, any,
Yeah, I
any
think so.
correct spellings in what I wrote are probably gonna be entirely by chance. I ain't no kind of speller. I know what you're thinking,
we
Jack.
have spell check.
Don't say it.
Have you been watching? We're still on the record, right?
We're still rolling.
Yeah. This is just conversation. It doesn't involve us other than personal interest. But have you been watching this episode unfold in Florida with the toxic pond? You realize how mirrored that could be to the sentence deal if we're not careful?
Yep.
Just gonna ship this potential phosphorus bound water out to the Gulf of Mexico where it'll probably kill 100 million fish.
Now, my understanding is that Blackburn sued them. And because they started the wastewater treatment plant without having a permit. And he kind of had them into the wall. So they agreed to work together for a solution on this, which will include, as I understand it, the constructed wetland downstream, which will be the big hill. That thing in Florida, the contamination is one thing, the potential for a tidal wave in some of those neighborhoods is
True.
even scarier.
Yeah, they've done the evacuation.
Yeah, I think they've evacuated, and they pumped a lot of it out already. So,
100 million gallons a day?
Yeah.
But where are they pumping it out? How did this?
oh, it's going into
Out
the
the
back,
back.
and it's, it's not water you'd want to drink, it's water you'd rather not have in the bay, but it's hard choices have to be made sometimes.
And there'll always be second guessing.
By the way, this is completely off the personal district. But this
Oh, good.
It would appear at this moment that I have a grandson that's going to attend the University of Arkansas.
All right.
Do you mind?
Or,
Let me give you the word. Let me walk you through this.
Federal,
Can you mind?
Federal.
or Federal, as he will soon learn to pronounce.
Yeah.
Nobody from there says Fayetteville. It's Federal, F-E-D-V-I-L.
Fayetteville,
Yeah.
okay. That's pretty interesting.
I was born there, so
I didn't know that.
I could say that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Going down to Fayetteville. Okay.
My grandparents moved, he was a big wig at Kaiser Aluminum in California. He bought property on top of the mountains in the Ozarks to retire on. And the first time we ever went up there, they made fun of my accent because I'm from Texas. They talked like this, they would go, Ewans. And I mean, you talk about backward.
All kind of words that end in
They
ER.
didn't have running water, they didn't
Hey,
have fresh food.
my grandmother lived on First Street in Rogers, Arkansas, the home of the first Walmart. 6 blocks from downtown. When she died in 1971, she still had an outhouse.
Yeah.
And a hand pump at the back door, which was about 75 feet from me.
My grandfather's property they bought had been over, I mean, this house was probably 90, 100 years old. They didn't have running water, didn't have, an indoor, they had an outhouse and the first time we stayed there, it was like camping out because you could look through you could see the outside, the wood, I mean, it was just awful. I'm so glad they built their own house.
First 5 years of my life, I had an outhouse.
Really?
We lived on an old, our house was built in the 1800s on a lumberjack home, and we did not have a bathroom in the house. Our downstairs in the basement, we had a big club foot tub. They had the outside hoses coming in, and then when you drained it, it ran down the floor into the drain, and then we had an outhouse, and we had at night the porta potties in the house.
My grandparents didn't have it either until.
I think that when I turned 5 years old, they started building a bathroom in the house.
Now, do you know what the nickname of the porta potty actually is?
We had an outhouse.
No, I'm talking about what your inside outhouse.
Ours was just a can, I don't know.
They call them thunder mugs.
Ours was they were ceramic,
Thunderbolt.
little,
Thunder mug.
ours literally were ceramic.
We're on camera too,
Of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our outhouse had 3 holes. We
Public
had mom and
education.
daddy and a little one.
aren't we? Now that's uptown.
I'm telling you,
Whoa.
we had a high class outhouse. Yep.
We'll get Mike back in here in a hurry. This is going on.
It's going down the shitter.
Oh, mercy.
I got a grandchild joke for you when we get done here today. My wife read me something off Facebook that I laughed, my face hurt. And it's clean. It's clean.
I got to see my granddaughter, oldest one the other day. She's a little redhead.
I said, look at your hair, so pretty. She was a little like,
She gets like, yeah, she's
kind of standoffish. By the time we listened to it,
That's funny. And the baby actually has her mama's looks, like she can throw some evil looks at you.
your daughter and 2 or 3 others in that state down basketball team. I kind of
Okay.
stayed close to their
I
college.
gave Val that document to start putting the edits together, so that you can have it to read, just to make sure you want to
Okay.
sign that one. And then I told her to draft the cover letter to mirror the wording, so she'll
Oh,
put
yeah.
that one as well.
This one.
Yeah, y'all can don't do that. Okay, let's see, are we ready to kind of resume business here?
Yes.
We've handled everything up to item 9, which is the chief appraiser's report.
Right.
So, you're at bat, Mike.
Okay, the chief appraiser's report, the very first subject is A, supplemental appraisal roll presentation. So you have the, it's called Board of Directors supplemental presentation. This is the same report that we report to you on it every time, that you don't have the ability to actually comment on or have anything about, but I have to present it to you. And these are the changes of the supplemental roll. So group detail number 335, and that you see right there, and you see the changes. So most of these, you'll see a market difference of 0. Those are most likely just exemption applications or something like that. Sometimes you do see changes and you will see like a negative balance, like in red, and those are like an agreed either arbitration that was done by, you have ARB, and then you have arbitration, and then you have lawsuits. So some of these are settled, some of these are arbitrations and things like that.
Arbitration or mediation?
Arbitrations, and then there's mediations as well. Mediations are tied to suit, arbitrations are specific animal. So,
And arbitrations end up in suit? Or arbitrations
arbitrations
take
are
care of
arbitrations.
themselves? I just want to be clear, okay.
Yeah, arbitrations are by themselves, mediations are part of
No, that
suit.
makes perfect sense. I thought you said that the arbitration grew to a lawsuit, and that would have made more sense than a mediation than, I got it.
Okay. So again, here's the, this is the roll as it's presented. You have supplement group detail 335, 336. It continues on to, hang on, let me see. Way down.
50.
Yeah. There's 27 pages of this supplemental roll presentation. It's here for you to, if you have a question about a specific thing, I can try to get you the answer for that. 337, 346, 339, 340, 341, 342, 343, 346, 347. Again, some of these are suits that have been settled. Some of these are arbitrations when you see a negative balance there. Just what it is. So we're about to get into suits in just a minute. So there's that. Does anybody have any questions on the supplemental roll presentation?
Determines whether you go to arbitration or to suit the
It's-
person filing.
Yes, that's exactly right. So a person can say, okay, for a person to be eligible for arbitration or suit, those are two different, you have A and B, or 1 and 2. They have to do a precursor, and the precursor is they have to have filed a protest in that year. So they have to file a protest, and they have to get a board order from the ARB, which is that set of 5 people that sit around this table and they say, yeah, I think the value's this, or I think the value's that. They have to get an order, whether they reduce the value or they keep it the same. That is the precursor. At that point, a person has an order. They can then say, I file an arbitration as specified in property tax code, or I can have a lawsuit.
If they go for arbitration, is it binding?
It's binding arbitration, and it's promulgated by the comptroller's office. So they send the form in, we sign the form, we send it to the comptroller's office. The comptroller selects from a registry a group of certified arbiters, and they're real estate agents, and they're all kinds of professionals. They listen. At some point, that arbiter reaches out to us and they say, okay, here's your case. It's Mr. Jones in the appraisal district. Mr. Jones says that his house is worth 300. The appraisal district says it's worth 400. Let me hear your evidence. And it's like another case. And so if it's closer to their number than it is our number, we pay the arbiter fee, and it's like $300 or $500 or something like that. And then we make the change in the supplemental roll. If they're closer to ours, like let's say, again, a perfect scenario, like an example would be 300 and 400, and they went to 375. Well, that would be closer to ours, but we'd still change the roll to 375 because it was arbitration. okay? Now, in a suit, that's the second scenario. The suit can have a mediation prior to it going to court. So that's typical mediation. I will tell you that we're about to get to pending lawsuits and things like that. And one of the things that was still open just closed this last week. So when I did this report for you, it was still ongoing kind of thing. And we got one of those closed. We got one of those mediated. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. No, that was good. That was plenty good.
Okay, good. Moving on to any more questions for supplemental role? Anybody?
Yeah, can we do a lot less of them, please?
Yes, I would love
Just a
that.
lot less of them.
We can talk to the,
And you can tell who does them.
we can tell, yeah. As soon as I do my end, then I give it all to Anna and she
Yeah.
gets to go, oh, you're gonna have to refund? Or what about,
Gotta
yeah.
love refunds.
Yeah.
No, my favorite are 11135Cs.
Yes, we're gonna get to
Those are
that.
my favorite.
We're gonna get to that one on subsection F here.
But you did say before anybody can go to arbitration and or sue, they have to go to the ARB and they have to get an order from the ARB.
They don't have to show up. They just have to file a protest and get a board order. So they can say, I protest and here's my evidence and I send it in. And as long as they get a board order, if they're a no-show, then they didn't get it. I mean, then they're a no-show. But as long as they get an order saying, hey, I denied your protest, then they have the availability to do an arbitration and or a suit. Or a suit.
Or suit.
Yeah, not and, but or a suit.
If they no show, do they get an order? They simply
They
say,
just
"We-
get,
We
If they
deny.
no show to what?
if they no-show, we don't have an order because the board doesn't convene on that account.
If they no show at a protest hearing?
Yes,
Yeah, there's no,
there's no.
it's never opened.
Okay.
They're just a, they're a no-show.
Yeah, they're,
That's it.
So if you no show, you can't go arbitrate or file suit, you no show.
yeah, there are some specific cases in which, like if you,
No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have opened the can of worms. I was
Well,
just-
But you did say, don't you have to show up? That's why his question.
yeah, if they don't show up and they have good cause, like they just had a open heart surgery
Okay,
2 days before, then that's good cause. And then they get a chance for another bite at the apple. But they still have to.
they still have to show at some point. Got it.
ARD.
That makes
They don't
sense.
get to just sue later
Got it.
without going through the process. It's called, it's process. It's part of the process.
Thank you. That's just good education.
He's taking notes for later.
No, it's good. It's good to know,
No.
like just what to tell people
No,
to
that's
do.
I
good.
know.
It's just good to know the process. I mean, I know the protest process, but how it gets from there to the next steps.
So
That's just good.
to give you an instance, I won't say names or whatever, but I had somebody come late and they said, man, this value is way jacked. Like, you can't do this. Like, well, you had a time to do that. And then you got a bill associated with that. And now you're calling me after the bill is delinquent. You don't have any remedies that are left to you. I mean, the only remedy that you have available to you is what's called a joint motion to correct. And that's part of the supplemental rule too. You get chief appraiser motions, which are just generally things that I say, oh, we have this wrong and I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. Or we do what's called a joint motion where you and I would say, oh, we agreed that there's no garage on your property. We're going to adjust that value by $20,000, whatever. That's called a joint motion to correct. It's correcting an area under 2525 of the code that says we mutually agree. We don't need the board to be involved because we mutually agree. That's called a joint motion to correct. In this particular case, this individual's like, hey, I'm going to sue you. I'm like, I don't think you have that remedy. You can talk to your attorney, ask him. I said, maybe he reads the law different than I do, but I don't think you have a remedy. Your only remedy is to have a joint motion to correct at some value based on your facts about your property, and I would have to agree. The district would have to agree. So those are little nuances in the process moving forward.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. The next one that we have are just the financials. And if you'll go to, it says January, February 2021. Again, we only have 2 months here to present, but you can see in that represents 17% of the year. And you can see this follows the budget outline of each of those line items. You can see a couple of those are really big, but they're typically only one time a year things. Like aerophotography is 94%, but we only get charged by them once a year. Those kinds of things.
What's your IT replacement?
IT replacement, that is, the reason it has 194 is because it's split between us and the tax office. Remember, if you'll go up to line item.
Build in their share yet?
No, they already have, but we get it twice. The reason it shows up only once on ours because this is our budget, but they've budgeted $7,107 on their side. So basically it's 14,000 for the year. And that's the reason it shows that, if you look, we've paid 13,800, but we really budgeted 14,000. And that's for Datto, for that Datto off server, what was, like offsite.
Okay, well, your
Outside
left
backup.
column with numbers in it says you budgeted 7107.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm still lost.
We budgeted 7107 for our side of it. This is only the Aransas County Appraisal District's budget. It's not the Aransas County and the tax office's budget. But you'll notice at the very top, it says IT replacement for tax office, and the revenue, there's $7,100 there. Do you see that?
Now it answers.
There you go. I got you. I'm with you too. Okay. I was
We
waiting
already
for that.
paid that.
That's the only.
You did pay it. It's up there.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, they got it.
Uh,
January 1st.
The only other one that's kind of big that you'll see, and we're going to talk about that, is legal services. We've already got 12. We've already got 57% in those first 2 months. A lot of that is carryover from 20 lawsuits. So basically anything that was suited in 20, that's a lot of that stuff, but we're going to go over that in just a moment. But this is the rest of the budget. You can see that we're 17% of the year, and we have expended 20% of the budget. So we're about on track.
Not even that when you go back and take the 7,100 away from it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and you had some upfront payments in there, I think, so.
Any other questions on the financials?
That was easy.
All right. Moving forward, presentation of pending lawsuits filed against the Aransas County Appraisal District. One of the things that this board said that it wanted to look at was just, what can we expect in the future as far as legal services? How much of that is just, my counsel counseling me on the law, on property tax law, and moving forward in a way that keeps me out of jail. And then the second thing is how much does the district get sued? What does that look like now? What does that look like for the future? So this is my best report that I've been able to compile. And you will see total legal fees. Let's see, hang on. Total legal fees, let's see if this is 2020 or 2021. Yeah, total legal fees is the one we want to look at first. It's called total legal fees. And so I did 18, 19, and 20 just to give you a reference. And 21 is all by itself, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But 18, 19, and 20,
What are we looking at?
it's called total legal fees. And it's an Excel
Different
spreadsheet.
Okay, sorry.
Total legal fees.
Right.
And it's several little spreadsheets that are kind of, and I'm going to explain them, and I'm going to go through them together. So lawsuits for Evans that you can see, these are actually lawsuits. Evans is my counsel, Jim Evans, and those are the lawsuits that are represented in each year. So you can see in 18, we had about $4,200 worth of lawsuits related expenses. In 19, it was down to $2,800 in legal expenses that were contributable to lawsuits. And then in 20, you can see that number's increased to 14,000. Moving over to general, this is just his general counsel to me. This is, so you can see like if you were to just compare 20 general to 20 lawsuits, you can see that you have 18 to 14, so it's almost a 1-to-1 there, 18,000 to 14,000. Hinkle is the ARB's counsel. So the ARB is required to have counsel if they have questions about the property tax, how they're supposed to be an ARB, and any questions that they have. So their fees are much less per year, but they do have questions from time to time.
Is that Skip Hinkle?
Yes. Chapman, you can see Chapman, his related funds had to do with the purchase of this building as it related to just doing it in the right way. You can see the majority of those funds were allocated in 18 and 19, very little in 20, because we'd already purchased the building, in 18. But some of that fell over into 19. But if you look at those two numbers, that 18,000 and the 7,700, so, if you look at that figure, it's about 25, 26,000, something like that. If you look at that price and then you look at the cost that we purchased the building for at 549,000, that comes to about 4%. I mean, we would have paid that much into to a realtor had we used a realtor. So it's kind of a wash there, but we got good counsel on purchasing the building in the right way. Arbitrations, these are, again, these are tied to, like if you have not a suit, but you have an arbitration, it falls under the legal budget item. And that budget item has to do with payments, like when I said either you're closer to them or you're closer to us, this would have been ones that we lost and we would have had to pay the arbiter, okay? But moving down to the bottom, Ray and Woods are other hearings and judgments. Those have to be, again, associated legal things that cannot be heard by Evans. They have to be heard by somebody else. They're kind of miscellaneous as it relates to a judgment or some other associated costs. When you look at the total legal fees in each year, you're looking at 33 in 18, 18 in 19, and 35 in 20. So 18 and 20 are kind of commensurate. We were down in the intermediate year. What I see moving forward, and we're going to move to another spreadsheet. The other spreadsheet that we want to see, it says copy of total legal fees 2021, okay? That's second to the last one, copy of legal fees 2021. Now again, this is the same format, but it just has 2021 by itself. You can see that we've already spent 11,000 plus 3,000 for Evans. So 11,000 for lawsuits. And again, those are not 21 lawsuits, they're really 20 lawsuits that we're now just doing all the work for, okay? We've got general counsel at $3,100. Hinkle has already done $30 for the counsel. There's nothing for Chapman. There's nothing for, there's only $450 for arbitration. And then your Ray and Wood, we don't have anything yet. So there's nothing outside. Really, that total legal fee should actually be the summation of both lawsuits in general. It's wrong here. I'm sorry about that. Moving on to what's called, it's actually a Excel spreadsheet called lawsuits. These are the lawsuits that we actually have on file, okay? And if you move to that one, we have, let's see, 1, 2, less 20, we have 18 that's on this list for 2020. We only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only had 5 in 19. So we have 4 times the amount. In 18, we only had 1, 2, 3, 4. So we only had 4 in 18. We only had 5 in 19, and we have 18 in 2020. The majority of these are commercial in nature, and you can kind of see how much certified value is kind of hanging out there. So you have $47 million of value that's in dispute, okay? And only 2 of those, at the very line item number 3 and 4, only 2 of those are closed. I will tell you that a couple of these, it doesn't reflect this on the report, but there's a couple that we just finished last week. Last week, right?
On what?
BoD.
Mhm.
Yeah, BoD was a couple of these accounts, or I think it's one of these accounts.
Like Monday, Tuesday?
Was that the 6.6 million? Yeah, that's the 6.6.
Yep.
So the which is line item number 17 on the lawsuits. Do you see that?
Yep.
That 6.649 million, that's been mediated and settled. It has not, we don't have this judge's signature on it yet, but it's been mediated between us and the potential, the property owner's agent, so, or the property owner's attorney. So that's not reflecting on here as well. But you can see that we have the increased number of lawsuits. I think the majority of these are commercial in nature. We do have a few residential, but we have some boat storages, we have some hotels, and things like Walgreens, Sea Air, some bigger.
There's a lot of the commercial driven by the change to
the income approach. Yeah. And so one of the questions that this board posed to me through D was like, what can we expect moving forward? I think you're going to expect much of the same kind of thing. You're going to expect about 20, as far as lawsuits. Now, the good news, there's good and bad news. The bad news is that we have to answer the suit. It's legal fees. We have to prepare for the suit, which means we have to get an expert witness. What does that look like? Well, it looks like getting a commercial appraisal. What does that entail? It's about $10,000 a pop every time you turn around. So that's $10,000 of real money, like in our legal fee budget line item that we have to prepare for. And guess what? He does about half that work. Then you sit in a mediation room, you work it out, and then you're still on the hook for $5,000 of the $10,000 that you did. I mean, I don't even have that bill yet, but I know it's going to be north of $5,000. That's 5,000 real dollars that was flushed because a property owner exercised their right to sue. I mean, that's where we are. So if you want a real expectation, expect at least about 20 suits in the commercial nature, and you really have to know what you're doing, meaning that you have to get an expert witness. What does that look like? You have to get a commercial appraiser. What does that look like? That's about $7,000 to $10,000 a pop. And then I have to make the decision whether are we going to add $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000 on top of legal fees just to go to court, and at what point does it make good fiduciary sense to move forward with the suit? At what point do I say we settle at this amount? And I will tell you, just as a general rule, I get pretty hot and heavy at the beginning, and then I realize all those fees, and I go, man, probably don't want to make this go all the way, but sometimes I don't have a choice. I mean, I'm not the one suing, the property owner is, so I don't have choice. I have to put out values that I think are right. And we're not just doing this willy-nilly. We're doing it in such a way that not only do we answer the suit, but like you can see the first two were settled. There wasn't that much difference there. You could see the 223 to 185, 199 to 150. I just settled that. I stopped the bleeding on the legal fees to make those go away in those 2 years. So I'm making my best judgments as I move forward. Ultimately, I have the call when it relates to, I mean, my attorney serves at my pleasure, so I'm making the best decisions I can moving forward. I'll answer any questions that anybody has in relation to suits.
Going from 7 to 20, when you say going forward, you anticipate about 20, you think for this year as well?
I think so, just because and they're not going to be commercial, I don't think.
Okay.
Unless they carry over, unless people don't like what we do this year. Because obviously, I got one of this set of 18.
You know what, let me rephrase it. Absent carryover, do you expect if suits related to what's going on commercial, do you expect to have a issue every year, or it's just something that you think should be hashed out and then? Yeah.
I hope it can be hashed out. The reality is the market is so robust. I'm about to get to that report, but it's so robust that things like you're looking at this report and you see 1 million, 2 million, 3.2, 2.3, you see 1.8, you see these $1 million properties, 1.1. The majority of these are commercial properties.
Right.
And I'm here to tell you that this year alone, there was an excess of $6 million sales in Key Allegro alone, absent of the rest of the county, meaning that we have closer to 10 in excess of $1 million sales.
And I think you're answering my question. You anticipate possibly 20 suits and 20, but not the same not all from the income-based, different suits. You're not a rehashing of the same suits and things like that. I
I
mean,
think so. I mean, ultimately, yes, the answer is yes, at least 20. But my hope is that there's communication between my commercial appraiser and the people that have commercial properties. And like, we had a person that pushed to suit, and ultimately they wanted to mediate. They didn't have an expert witness. We had an expert witness. We ponied up that extra 10, which we're probably going to get that, probably we're going to get 5 of it back or something like that, but something. But the reality is he knows that his property's probably worth that, and that's why he wanted to mediate. My hopes are that when we go again and we push that little bit, from what that delta was, that he just says, I don't want that. But ultimately, that's his call, not mine. I hope I didn't try to circle around it. I'm real cautious about trying to understand what people are going to do.
well, there's no way to know. That answers my question. We obviously have a big increase, as Dee said. A lot of it's due to the change in methodology. And I just wondered if that was something that we could expect as a
You got three.
recurring gift, or is that something that's a one-year deal and then we move on once we've got past it?
I think we're going to be better moving forward, but it's going to be replaced by other things. You're going to have that one person that bought that 2.3 million, and he's going to sue. He's going to sue, and he's going to take his chances in the suit, and he's going to take his chances in mediation. And we're going to accrue legal fees all along from the very first time he petitions. We have to answer the suit all the way through mediation. We pay the mediator. We pay, it's just.
So how does this compare to our budget for legal fees? If we're anticipating doing this again next year, we within our budget, you think, or do you think we're going to be?
I think in 2022 we need to amend our budget. We were over budget this last cycle.
Okay.
If you're looking at the legal fees right now, we're already at 50%,
Mhm.
and that's only 17% of the year.
Mhm.
So we're on course to bust budget big time this cycle.
You don't expect that to slow down? That's
No,
not,
I don't.
okay, so that was kind of my question. So we're probably going to blow that this year and need to keep that in mind for next year.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and you also are dealing with the principal cost of your suits are not in the year in which the suit was filed.
Yeah, subsequent years. Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. All right, moving on to any more questions on the pending lawsuits presentation? The actual second page of that, it actually shows you the suits if you're interested. It's just there. I mean, who sued and why they sued, and unequal appraisal or incorrect appraisal or whatever, if you want to look at that. Moving on to the building remodeling update. All I have to report there is that Frank and I have had a meeting. He is contacting some designers. I'm contacting people that hopefully can put us in touch with designers. And that's all we have to report thus far. Moving on to E, which is the 2020-2021 valuation totals presentation. Again, I want to caution the board to understand its role. This is merely a report to educate you on what the values were last year and what they are this year. You can ask me questions, but as you know, you have no influence on my opinion of value. So here's the presentation. On 2020, we're going to go to the, let's see where it's at.
The 2020 certified total?
Yes, 2020 certified totals, which is, yes, it's a PDF, the fourth one down. 2020 certified totals. This is looking at a snapshot. If you go to just page 1, it's a snapshot of the overall market value in the entire county. And if you look on page 1 on the right-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, it says market value. It says 4.094 billion with a B, and that's overall market value in the county. Just for comparison analysis, you compare that with the other document, which is which says 0324 prelim totals, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down. I think that is 6 down. And if you look at page number 1, You notice the market value is 4.735 million. That's an increase of approximately 615 million, if I did my math right. 473,735 and 4.094. I didn't do my math right, I guess. Let's see, hang on. I was talking to, 615 is another conversation I had with somebody else. That's what's stuck in my head. That's not right. Hang on. 4735 minus 4094. That's 641 million. 641 million is the increase over last year. 614 represents about divided by 4735. That represents about a 14% increase, 13.5% increase.
How does that compare to our prior year increases?
It was about almost.
Harvey throws a blip in that, but I mean, if you went back.
Last year from the year previous to the year that, it was 11. It was almost 11. It wasn't quite 11. So
It's not far off.
Yeah.
Well, how did you come up with that?
Okay, so these are preliminary totals. We come and we analyze property, we analyze sales. Part of this report actually has to do with new value. So in this report, if you're looking at 2021 and you go to, hang on. You go to page 5 of this report. And on page 5 of this report, it actually tells you how much of it is actually new value. Now, what is new value? New value is stuff that's newly constructed, stuff, sticks and bricks that are going up everywhere. That's not just market driven. That's just sticks and bricks, cost of putting things together driven. So if you look at page 5 of that report, it actually says of that 641 million, 109 of it is actually new build stuff or completed stuff. So if somebody had a house that was half complete at the 1/1 of 2020 and now it's complete, the remaining of that balance is considered new value. Or if it's brand new between one year to the next, it's new value. So of the 109, you've got 641. So you go 109 divided by 641. That represents 17% of that entire market value total increase is represented by new structures or new value. Okay. The remaining 83% is market driven. It's just the market saying, let's go get it. And you're thinking, wow, man, that's a lot of value attributable just by that portion. But when you look at the marketplace, you understand that the inventory used to be measured in months and now it's measured in days. In some cases, it's measured in hours. Like when you see things that are on the market, if you don't, like, everybody knows what a good value is at the bottom end. The law of substitution in appraisal methodology says that you can take your money and what can you go substitute that money for? Basically, it's saying, where could my money best be suited to buy the best bang for its buck in layman's terms? And everybody in Rockport that's in the marketplace, meaning that they're actually potential buyers and potential sellers, know that they're buying from the bottom up. Meaning that stuff that used to be like on Oak Terrace, where Oak Terrace used to be, the average home used to be like 165, 175. Now it's like 235 is not uncommon. And one was on the market the other day. One was on the market 3 weeks ago for like 245,000, and it lasted for 4 days. And the only reason it lasted that long is because it went into a bidding war and there was over 20 offers on that house. The reason I know that is because I knew one of the bidders.
There was another one on Oak Street that went for 165 because the inside wasn't remodeled. It was gone in 3 days because I tried it to get it.
Yeah.
It was just that, it went on the market and it was gone.
That listing got 22 offers
offers?
in like 6 hours.
I figured as much.
So
It's a cutthroat market right now.
to say the market is robust would be a gross understatement. So in answer to your question, the market's telling us to move. And we're hoping, this is a year in which we're studied. It's called a property value study. And we're hoping that the comptroller understands that it's just like moving at such a severe pace that we can't keep up. And we're trying to keep up with market values. We're like, we analyze sales and we say, we think that this whole neighborhood is moved by this amount because of these 4 markers or these 10 markers in this neighborhood. And that's what we're doing. That's where the majority of that value is coming from. So the reports are there for you to look at. They've been, submitted to you. You can, if you have questions about like, this is a CAD total, which means it's kind of like a whole county total. You can look specifically to Rockport. You can look to ACISD if you wanted to. I can answer questions that you have. I can talk about this for a long time. In fact, I was contacted by one of the members of the ACISD board today, and she had some questions about like market value and like how it relates to school property tax and things like that. We had a really good conversation. But her mindset of her worldview of what it was, when we looked at the numbers, it wasn't quite what she expected. And it was a good conversation. It was good. It's good for me to educate you so that you can, when you go out in the community, kind of what's going on. Like, if you didn't know, Rockport is like the rest of the state, even more so on fire. It's on fire right now. If you own property and you want to sell and you want to move somewhere else, you're in good shape. If you want to move here, it really sucks for you.
Unless you move from California.
Right.
No, yeah, you can afford the houses here.
Apparently,
Yeah. And as far as commercial stuff goes, we made a lot of our big moves last year. There's one area in warehouses that we're going to move warehouses to a modified income basis, but
Yeah, we'll add that I was really looking forward to getting offices and getting all the offices and freestanding retail and that kind of thing completely done as well, just for completeness' sake. The problem being actually accurately coming up with cap rates for office property on January 1 of 2020. I mean, you could do it now, but for January 1 of 2020, nobody in the country had an accurate cap rate. It was a guess, because what is the risk involved with buying an office building in the middle of when everybody isn't allowed to go to work? Do you want to buy an office building in January 1 of 2020? Probably 2021, probably not. So, that would normally say it's a good time to buy it because you could buy it cheap, but nobody's letting it go either because there's an end to it sometime, but when, nobody knows. So we didn't poke that one, but warehouses showed up as being, we had sales of those saying, hey, there's a bunch of warehouses going to and from.
And you'll see like one of these
good data.
And that's good, Eamon. Thank you. There's one of these data points here on the new value. You'll notice that new value in multifamily has increased $10 million. I mean, we've got Pearl Point coming online. We've got some other people that are breaking ground and trying to put multifamily in. So there's like, not only do we have just a total of 641, but we have things being built at at a really fast click right now. So this number is only going to go up next year because of new builds. And it may go down due to market. I mean, but you would have to get a real downturn. And it would be not just Rockport driven, it would be like nationwide or statewide because we're pretty hot right now. So I'll answer any questions anybody has. I mean, specifics or generals or whatever. This is really kind of where I'd like to spend all my time. It's like analyzing, like, what is that worth? Because essentially that's what an appraiser does. So what is that thing worth, All right, well, moving on. The last thing I have is the update on properties affected by tax code 11135. 11135 is a property part of the tax code that deals with the ability for somebody to keep a homestead or homestead and over 65 while they reconstruct their property after damage from a natural disaster. I don't know, I probably said this before, but I gave testimony to Representative Shine to get the law changed several years ago, extending that period from 2 years to 5 years, okay? I think it's a good thing. I think it's an advocate for property taxpayers. It's a good law. It takes a long time to do, right? It takes a long time to rebuild. We had over 800 properties that were immediately identified subsequent to the storm. So it would have been like in August of 17, all the way to August 17 when Harvey hit. So July of 18, we sent out notices to over 800 people that said, hey, we think your home is damaged in such a way, you had a homestead, do you want to continue? Like, are you building back? Are you moving? Are you reconstructing? Have you done everything necessary to start the process? Many people have rebuilt. Some people have not. And if they don't rebuild, it's like they never intended to return. So they pay like back taxes for the differences between what they would have paid had they not had the exemption. And that's called 11135C. Anna's intimately aware of that because I send that list every so often and she gets to go collect those back taxes for that. It's plus 7%.
Makes some people really happy.
Oh, yeah, and
Yeah.
then we get the backlash, because I send the bills, because besides the 7%, they're like, and a lot of them, they play the old dumb card. But the appraisal district does give them advance notice, gives them 30 days to protest it?
We give the property owner the notification that they're going to be
Because
assessed.
a lot of times it's a new owner that gets it, and they know nothing about it.
The new owner does get it, and the reason that they get it is because the way the law is written is you don't know that the change takes place until there's an actual change. So if there's a change of ownership, which property owners are not asking us, hey, what should I do? Should I sell this now? Or no, they just sell it, right?
Mhm.
And it's not complete. And when they do so, then they pay that difference in taxes. Well, you can't because that property owner's gone. He's done sold it.
Yeah.
Well, what happens? They attach a lien to the property until that thing is satisfied. Of course they're upset. The new property owner's upset. Of course they're upset because the other property owner didn't tell them about this thing, and now they're having to take it up with them.
That didn't fall on the title company.
Well, no, because the title companies don't know about it. I do have Stewart Title is very good with us. They work, Kelly knows about it, and she knows, she calls them, is this one that could fall under it? And they're like, yes, and then she'll call me and get an estimate, and they will escrow it and hold it until I send them a bill.
I will tell you that
Not every,
Donna and the front office staff have had conversations to a large degree with every title company that's here. But really, it doesn't need, the burden of proof is not there. The burden of proof is that I sent the property owner a letter informing them their property's been identified as 11135. They gave them the right to continue to hold their exemption. I was a recipient of that. I rebuilt my home. But once it goes to 11135 and then we do /done, that means I've completed my construction. I'm no longer I'm no longer even looked at as any kind of penalty because I completed my construction. I didn't sell it before it was complete. And so those are the only people that are penalized. It's a pretty small list. We've had probably 20 or 30.
it's more than I think you think. Because I went and looked at my stack today. It's a pretty good stack.
Okay.
And the last, I gave my stacks.
I'm just thinking from my occupation, is that if you were to file notice of that letter to the customer in the real estate records, title company's got to do that. They can't look the other way when they've seen it.
We file it with the owner of record.
And it should say after
And
the
it was in
sale.
July, the owner of record that was in July of 18, because they're the ones that are receiving the
Of
exemption.
those, yeah.
So what you're saying is under this condition, the current homeowner has to sue the selling homeowner because he knew about it if he wants to recover.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of title companies call us and they're involved.
Yeah.
They'll get involved with it. I have had numerous conversations with the local title companies. Like I said, Stewart's very good with us. And because they know, they're very diligent, they look at the properties when they get contracts on them, and she's constantly questioning. And then, but the other title companies, I just can't, they're just not, it's like they don't care, they're
Until
not
you
there.
wake them up. from-
Right, and I think one of
where
them out
there's
of
liability.
Portland is dealing with one of them now, so I think they're kind of awake with the situation. Because the new owner went back to them and said, now, wait a minute, I'm getting this bill now.
Right. Okay, so this all leads to the greatest point, which is just informing you of the letter that we're about to send out. So August of 17, it was the time of the storm. It says you have 5 years to do it, 5 years to complete your construction. So that means in August of 22, the construction has to be complete. We're about to give people over a year's notice that, hey, you kind of start need to wrapping up. You need to actually be done prior to August of 22. So we're about to send out 101 letters. I think it's the number that I have. So the number was over 800. Now we only have 100 that we're about to say, hey, you need to get done or you're going to be penalized. I mean, that's the letter that's going out. So if you hear in the community, like I got this letter, they say they're going to penalize me and the big bad appraisal district, listen, I'm just following the law. I've given them notice at the beginning. I'm giving them notice at the end. I'm giving them over a year's notice to get done. And I didn't write it. In fact, I wrote on advocacy that it was extended. Otherwise it would have been executed 3 years, year and a half, 2 years ago.
That would have cost.
I still have a
Yes.
few of them that are calling and they are still dealing with like Glow or whoever, and they're freaking out over it because they know they only have a year and a half left.
Yes, and that's all, there is no remedy in the law. There's no like extension that I see in the law. Now, it doesn't mean that they couldn't rewrite it between, but they're in session right now, and I know that's not under, that's not one of the ones that was picked up. Like, that's not one of the pieces of legislation that's even talked about right now. So it can't change in the time period that they're looking for. So I wanted to inform you about 101 letters about to go out. If you hear from that in the paper, just say, hey, listen, that's part of the code. If you have a question, call the appraisal district. I'll tell them the same thing I told you. It's an unfortunate kind of gray area it's not really a gray area. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances.
Well, let me ask you a question, kind of parallel, at least I think of it is. You've got an elderly parent. Child moves in to take care of the elderly parent, and it becomes a permanent basis. Elderly parent dies. Home ownership is transferred to the child that moved into it. They now have it. And mom, or whoever died in the home, has been, having the over 65 homestead exemption for X years. Child who moved into the home is not aware of the homestead exemption going up. They sell the house when the appraisal district is coming after them for the back taxes for mom's now passed away and she didn't qualify for the over 65. Does that go on to the new owner?
Hey, are you talking about a house that was destroyed or
No.
not destroyed?
No.
No, it just transfers.
Only relative to the destruction?
Yeah, it transfers when we get the information that it transfers. So usually it's done by deed and we transfer.
And it's
that.
only a construction or damage issue, not a,
But I think
The
what
letter
you're
you're
getting
talking
at
about only
is-
is for destruction. It's for
Yes.
damage that's not fixed, right?
So in that case,
Yeah, it's
the-
11-135. It's
That's
only
a
dealing with
different
the natural
scenario.
disaster.
Yeah, what you're
Yeah.
talking about is a totally different
Yeah, it's
scenario.
well, it just would have
And-
already been done. We would have already driven by and said, this is livable again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not as good as it used to be, but it is rebuilt to livable condition. And so they've completed the 11-135 requirement and they're just
Okay.
back to a normal
so
homestead.
it's not a parallel.
No.
If-
The only
if it-
time that would happen is if they never rebuilt the house at all.
Yeah. People,
With the insurance money involved.
yeah, if it's not a natural disaster situation, it's just an over 65 and then they give it to their son, that exemption just gets reset the next year. It just goes to no exemption until that new applicant.
But the exemption is not known. What I'm saying is if it didn't get caught for 5 or 10 years.
We have the ability to supplement up to 5 years. Those are pretty rare. They're pretty,
Those are rare. Now, it has happened numerous times where if in the middle of the year, the home, the taxes are, the title company does the proration with the exemption on it. But then when the taxes come out, it goes to the new owner and they remove the exemption. So they can back it up. Yes, the new owner is responsible for that difference and we will send them a bill.
Bingo.
yeah. As far as the people that die that we don't know about, it happens, but out of 5 years, you might get 5 people that we miss. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, because we've had one today that we didn't have access to.
So that's all I have for the chief appraiser's presentation. Val was kind enough to kind enough to change this language if you want to read it, D.
Okay, I can take a quick look and sign it. I don't know, unless everybody wants to hear it read.
I'm good with it.
Or have you enjoyed enough already?
Oh, man, I've heard it enough.
It says wording read into the record, and it says wording on signed document. So what you read was, and what you like marked up were two different things. It says you need to pick between one of these two versions. So
Oh, it gave you two.
she did, Val will catch you too.
Good.
See if she has it.
So those are the main two he needs to pick from on the resolution part.
Right, I went back and just listened because, it was kind of hard to read that.
So it's
So
different version.
Here's a black van.
Yeah. that was the title that was read into the record, but it just, sounded
So it's just another one he needs to choose from.
no, just if y'all want to, change the title. I was just, just a matter of a couple of words for what I could do best.
Well, they're doing it. Let me ask you a question. So you got a Harvey damage.
Okay.
They got 5 years under the new law to get it back.
Yeah, the only
As it
thing
was.
different.
Their rate,
Right.
does it go down to a new value, to a reduced value, or stay where it was, homestead value?
For people that are over 65?
Yeah.
It depends on if they built it back substantially bigger or better. So if they just put it
No, if
back,
they don't fix it, if they partially fix it, like he said, living conditions.
it's not likely to go below wherever they're trees held them. If your house, if you were frozen and your house was being taxed $400, and then nowadays it should be taxed $800 a year, but you were frozen, right? And then it gets damaged and you rebuild it, and it's still not completely right. There's still some damage left on the house. The odds that that damage is gonna reduce your taxes to below $400 a year is not very good. Unless you're like a recent over 65, you're frozen a year prior to the hurricane, something like
So
that.
aren't there some
Not like-
houses out there
It could happen. It's just not.
aren't they? Hey, all my friends are over 60. Aren't there a lot of houses out there that have been partially, well, I know people still living in 2 or 3 rooms, so they haven't been able to get contractors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing, like that could happen if your value of your house currently and the tax rate being applied ends up being lower than what you were frozen at originally. So the ceiling is a ceiling. It can always go down. It just can't go over that ceiling. The question is, you're frozen here. You should be up here. The storm took you down here. It has to go below your freezing to start dropping. It's just that would really
I'm
likely
sorry, it
only
was a long
happen.
meeting. Got a lot of good work done.
Somebody who was frozen really
And
recently.
it will give us some good
If
basis.
you've been frozen for a
to
good
know-
while,
just
you're
know
probably
when we're
digging
moving
enough out of
forward
your,
In May,
your over
in May,
65
really
freeze.
when we do
So
our
they're
And
pre-budget
it's
meeting,
holding
so
you back from
when
more than you
June 10th rolls around, which is when the budget meeting is for 2022, we already have all our questions answered. So in May, we kind of laid some of the bases, maybe for the legal fees, maybe that's gonna be adjusted or something like that. But hopefully that'll be the big May item, is going to be like maybe an update on what we're gonna do as far as this rebuild of this building or remodel of this building. And then the other thing is gonna be the pre-budget meeting, so that we get asked all the tough questions, so that by the time June rolls around, it's a real easy meeting, and we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to answer all the tough questions at that point. Anna, you got anything? Awesome.
Not today.
We're done. Thank everybody.
All right.
You're thinking another meeting in May.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need a meeting in May, and we definitely need one in like early June. So early May and early June. So we're gonna do.
That may be part of his.
I'm gonna do the same thing. Did y'all like the format of me getting stuff out about 5 or 6 days
Yeah,
beforehand?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
We adjourn.
I'm gonna vote for May.
I'm not adjourning because he said we don't need to
Well,
adjourn.
No.
That's exactly
We're
right.
done.
You don't even just say
No.
we're adjourned?
We can say we're done or bye or whatever, but